Let's take a look at the subatomic from DSM Noisemaker. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at the subatomic and see what we got here. The first thing, and you probably noticed already too, but struck me right away, is the size of the unit. This thing is crazy small. I mean, it's literally the size of two of my fingers. I mean, that fits in your pocket. It's insane, and especially to have this many functions on it, so I got to hand it to them right away just to be able to pack that much into this small of a unit. Oh, and a quick side note on signal chain. There's no preamp being used with it. I went directly into this and then out to an impulse of my favorite cabinet. It's an 810 that's been mic'd with a Royer 121 and an SM57. So it's here into a cab to give it that, you know, kind of finished feeling and hitting through speaker cones, but there's no preamp. The other thing to recognize about this is most crossover distortions that I've seen, at least, and ones I've reviewed before, it's a preamp and distortion package more than just a distortion. There's kind of a baked-in EQ curve or a certain sound that you get that's kind of that company's vibe or their take on how they think the overall tone should be. That's not the case here. This is just distortion. You can have a lot of control over the distortion and it has its own color, but the fundamental sound is your sound. So it's you exploded out, which is kind of an interesting idea because I don't really know of too many other units that give you just a ton of control over the distortion, but don't alter your fundamental sound. So let's take a deeper look at the controls and see what we got here. The master is pretty much self-explanatory, so let's go into the drive and drive gain. Now, the center switch is what gives you an overall voicing. And you've got three positions. Let's dial up some gain here. And I'm going to add in a bit more on the blend too. So all the way to the side, you get kind of a mid-hump. You get a very throaty, chunky, kind of a lot of punch in the center. Go to center position and you get a much more defined kind of sound, very direct, not a lot of bloat or a lot of dead low end or mud coming through. Now in the third position, you still get a good definition, which is kind of impressive that it pulls off. But you've got a darker tone overall. So that makes a big difference, but you've also got this tone that you can adjust the overall color even of that, which it's basically darker to lighter. So you've got, let's get this dialed up. Dial your tone back. So you could set an overall EQ, an overall contour basically, and then a really wide-ranging tones. You can go from a darker or a lighter shade of that. So a ton of control just in those two pieces right there. So that's going to be able to tailor a big chunk of how the distortion sounds, how it comes through, and how it affects your overall color. So a lot of great options, again, in a really tiny area. Now let's check out the bottom end here and look at your frequency and settings for where you start adding distortion to the sound. So I'm going to set, again, a little bit more distortion. We'll lean towards it. But you can hear on the bottom, if you set your sub frequency all the way to the left, to the center, a lot less low end going into the distortion. You get a bit more of an aggro tone, and you can tell that the frequency that's it's starting to feed the distortion has moved up a bit. Then all the way to the right. Not quite as dark as all the way to the left, but definitely a bit meatier than the center. So again, you could tailor how much and what overall amount of your general signal is getting fed into the distortion, and then tailor it through the top so you can completely mold not only how much is getting fed into the distortion, but the color of it, the overall tone shade, and the contour. So it's really surprising how with just a couple switches and a couple knobs, how much control and tailoring you're able to do over the distortion. Now finally, you have the blend knob, and that's pretty self-explanatory again. You know, all the way back, you've just got your direct and about 50%. And then full blend, which would be all distortion, no delay. Almost all the way up is what I used for the chord section at the end of the demo example. So again, you can hear a ton of variety. You can almost get those guitar style, really aggressive chords. So it's not just an overall bass distortion. You could brighten up and totally compete in that area if you wanted to, or get even a Lemmy type of strumming chord thing and still have articulation because you can still tone carve with what you have up on top. So that pretty much covers it for the unit. I'm really impressed by it. I think it's definitely a different take from what I've seen on crossover distortion, and big shout out to Daniel at DSM Noisemaker for getting this out to me super early. I think there's still a pre-order going on at this time, so I'm glad I could put the demo out, let you guys hear a little bit of it, and you know, it's well worth checking out. You might be able to save a few bucks if you get in a little soon. So check them out, links below, and as always in the comments, questions, let me know what you think of the module or anything that you think I should have covered a bit more, or any questions. On top of that, got a couple more pedals coming up, got 2 more basses, this one included. Going to do a full review on that, and another episode of Metal Bass Microscope coming up really soon, probably a couple of them. So, like, share, subscribe, let me know what you think. Throw death threats, whatever you got to do. But I will see you on the next one.